Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a world that's literally all around us and even inside us, yet it's completely invisible. We're talking about a world of organisms so small they can create life-saving medicines and, on the other hand, cause devastating plagues. We're going to explore the incredible, invisible world of microorganisms.
So let's start with a wild question. What if the most powerful life on Earth was completely invisible? I mean, think about it. We usually associate power with size, right? Giant whales, elephants, massive redwood trees. But what if the real movers and shakers, the organisms that hold the keys to life and death on this planet, were actually too small to even be seen? Because that's pretty much exactly the case. So what exactly are we talking about here? The term is microorganism, or you'll often hear microbe for short. And the definition is simple. It's any living thing that's so tiny you absolutely need a microscope to see it. And, as we're about to find out, they come in a few key and very different varieties. Now, this microbial world is incredibly diverse. You've got these single-celled powerhouses like bacteria and protozoa. Then there are fungi, which are usually made of many cells, like the mold you might see on old bread, but with a really important exception, yeast. Algae can be single-celled or get much bigger, but maybe the most fascinating of all? Viruses. They are right on the borderline of what we even consider living. They only really spring to life once they get inside a host cell, like one of ours.
Okay, so we've got this massive, invisible world. The big question is it on our side? Well, let's start with the good news. Let's explore all the amazing ways these microbes act as our powerful and often really surprising allies. Let's start with breakfast. Ever had yogurt, a slice of toast? If so, you've got a microbe to thank for it. That creamy yogurt or curd you eat is made by a specific bacterium called lactobacillus, which does its thing and converts milk. And that fluffy bread or that birthday cake? That's all thanks to yeast, a little single-celled fungus that is, no joke, the backbone of the entire baking industry. So yeah, 2 different microbes, 2 delicious results. The secret behind things like bread and beer is this amazing process called fermentation. And it's actually pretty simple. You take a microbe, like yeast, and you add it to a sugar source. The yeast eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. And we figured this out. We've harnessed this simple biological reaction for centuries to create everything from wine and beer to all sorts of things on a massive commercial scale. Microbes are also, believe it or not, medical marvels. I mean, just think about this idea for a second. We use one microbe to wage war on another, and that's exactly what an antibiotic is. These are life-saving medicines, like the famous penicillin, which actually comes from a fungus. And they're designed specifically to kill or just stop the growth of harmful bacteria. It's like microbial warfare, and we're the ones directing the battle.
So what about stopping diseases before they even start? Well, that's where vaccines come into play. A vaccine basically introduces a dead or super weakened version of a pathogen, that's just the fancy name for a microbe that causes disease, into your body. It's not enough to actually make you sick, but it's just enough to sound the alarm bells for your immune system. Your body sees this intruder, learns how to fight it by creating things called antibodies, and then, this is the crucial part, it remembers that enemy forever. It's basically a training boot camp for your body's own internal army.
But microbes aren't just allies for our food and our health, they're absolutely essential for the entire planet. For instance, some bacteria, like Rhizobium, do this incredible job called nitrogen fixation. They literally pull nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil so plants can grow. At the same time, other bacteria and fungi are out there acting as nature's ultimate cleanup crew. They decompose all the dead plants and animals, recycling vital nutrients back into the ecosystem. Without them, we literally be buried in our own waste.
Okay, so they help us make food, they give us medicine, they even clean the planet. They sound great. So, how can they also be our worst enemies? Let's flip the coin and look at the darker side of the microbial world.
A lot of humanity's most feared diseases are caused by these tiny little organisms. Bacteria? They're the culprits behind nasty illnesses like tuberculosis, cholera, and typhoid. Viruses are responsible for everything from measles and polio to chickenpox. And other microbes, like protozoa, can cause absolutely devastating diseases like malaria. Each one of these is a tiny foe with a gigantic impact.
And their destructive power isn't just aimed at us. Microbes are a huge threat to our food supply. They cause terrible diseases in livestock, like anthrax. They attack our crops with blights, like rust of wheat. And of course, they're the reason our food goes bad, spoiling it, making it smell, and sometimes leading to really dangerous food poisoning.
So, how do we fight back? Especially when it comes to protecting our food? Well, the core idea, the guiding principle, is actually very simple. We just have to create an environment where these harmful microbes can't live. If they can't grow, they can't spoil our food. It's as simple as that. And over the years, we've gotten really clever about doing this. Adding salt or sugar, that actually draws out the moisture that microbes need to grow. Using oil and vinegar creates an acidic environment that bacteria just hate. Pasteurization, which we all know from milk, uses a quick blast of heat to kill off the bad guys. And even the simple act of putting leftovers in the fridge uses cold temperatures to dramatically slow down their growth. Okay, so far we've kind of painted this picture of microbes as either our friends or our foes. But to be honest, their most important role is something much, much bigger than the simple good versus evil story. It's a role that, frankly, makes life on Earth possible for every single one of us. Look at this number, 78%. That's how much of the air we breathe is nitrogen gas. It's an absolutely essential building block for life. But here's the massive catch. For the most part, plants and animals can't use nitrogen in its gas form. It's right there, all around us, but it's locked away. So how does it get from the air into the living world? Well, the answer is something called the nitrogen cycle. And you can think of it as a giant engine that is powered almost entirely by microbes. You have these special bacteria that fix the nitrogen from the air, making it usable for plants. Then animals get it by eating those plants. When living things die, different decomposer microbes return that nitrogen to the soil. And finally, to keep the whole thing in balance, other bacteria release some of it back into the atmosphere as gas. It is a perfect planet-wide loop, and microbes are running the show. Our whole relationship with this invisible world has been one long, slow journey of discovery. For thousands of years, we lived at its mercy without even knowing it was there. But then, a series of brilliant scientific breakthroughs changed everything, allowing us to finally see and then begin to harness this unbelievable power. And you can really see how one discovery led to the next. It all started back in the 1670s, when a guy named Leeuwenhoek first saw bacteria through his homemade microscope. It took over 100 years, but then Edward Jenner developed the very first vaccine. Fast forward to the 1850s, and Louis Pasteur finally figures out the secret of fermentation. And then, in 1928, Alexander Fleming's famous accidental discovery of penicillin kicked off the entire age of antibiotics. Every single step gave us more power and a deeper understanding of this hidden world. So we kind of end up right back where we started. We live in a world that is governed by these tiny, incredibly powerful organisms. They aren't just friends or foes. They're a fundamental force of nature. They're responsible for our food, our health, the very air we breathe. And as our knowledge of them grows and grows, the real question becomes, how will we choose to tip that delicate balance between their power to heal and their power to harm?